Hello and welcome back to our channel. Today we're talking about fee shifting, a concept many clients hear about but don't fully understand when considering a lawsuit. Christine, our lead attorney here at A. Ferraris Law, will be explaining it a bit better for us. So, our first question. What does fee shifting mean in litigation, and how does it differ from the general rule that each party pays their own attorney's fees?
Hello, Lizette. Thanks for the good question. Attorney fee shifting, and that's attorney fees can be basically the fees that are incurred, when an attorney is helping their client, work through litigation. And it can be before you file a lawsuit, and it can be, and then during the litigation. And sometimes after, when a judgment needs to be collected, which would be, a decision by the court and a jury relative to the case. So it's a rule built on many consumer protection laws, that's what our focus is here at A. Ferraris Law. Consumer protection can mean a small business or just an individual. Both state and federal allow the prevailing plaintiff, consumer or small business, to recover their fees from whomever committed the deceptive or other unfair act that's the subject of the lawsuit. It basically is intended to help those that usually can't afford legal fees and costs to collect. And it's often used as a persuasive tool to resolve the matter prior to going to trial, or maybe even prior to filing the case. Consumers and small businesses don't usually have much money to pursue, especially if it's like an insurance company or a bank that has done the wrongdoing and where they have, a lot of money to pursue litigation. So it's meant to level the playing field. You'll see attorney fee shifting in cases involving consumer fraud or deceptive practices, warranty violations, credit reporting errors, bank lending, financial institution lending violations, and insurance-related claims. The exact rule and how it is applied depends on what it says in the statute. And it doesn't mean the consumer never pays fees. It just means they get reimbursed for their legal fees and costs. And then the court usually determines what the legal fee is in terms of reasonableness, because many of the statutes will say reasonable attorney's fees. And that is something that the court might need to decide. It basically recognizes that accountability shouldn't depend on how much money somebody has. And fee shifting helps ensure that companies that have not been following the law are brought to justice. Thank you for the good question.
Thank you so much. Our second question is, in the types of cases our firm handles, such as consumer protection and warranty enforcement, what are some common state or federal laws that allows attorneys' fees to be shifted to the opposing party?
Thank you again, Lizette, for another good question. There are many consumer protection laws, both federal and state, that specifically allow for attorney fee shifting. At the federal level, there's the Truth in Lending Act, which covers certain lending and disclosures of when it comes to a loan that a lender must provide and must do it so in a certain way so that it's understood by a consumer. And then the Fair Credit Reporting Act applies when credit reporting is inaccurate and how it's reported and when it's reported. And then we have the Magnus and Moss Warranty Act, which covers products, consumer products, particularly. So like vehicle warranties, your HVAC system that you purchase, the warranties and how they're applied, how they're disclosed, and how they're actually enforced. At the state level, and again, those were all at the federal level, which is kind of, and the Magnuson-Moss Warranty Act, it's an overlay of state vehicle warranty laws and the Uniform Commercial Code, which most states have. Louisiana has its own particular type of Uniform Commercial Code. But as far as the state level, each state, generally speaking, has a consumer fraud or deceptive practices statute that includes fee shifting. Here in Arizona, unfortunately, the Attorney General has, as a matter of right, under that particular statute, can collect attorney fees and costs, but it hasn't been applied necessarily to private rights of action by consumers. But that doesn't mean a consumer still can't sue a company and collect legal fees, because there's often an overlay of other statutes that can be used. For example, under Arizona 12-340-101, that's a breach of contract. The prevailing party can seek recovery of legal fees and costs. There's a lot of nuances with these statutes that you really need to have a professional opinion as to, what the likelihood or how it applies to your particular case. And then as far as warranty statutes, Unfair and Deceptive Practices Act, it is vary with each state. So it's best to consult with somebody or to really know and understand how the attorney fee statutes are applied in your jurisdiction. But the common thread is that lawmakers, generally speaking, in the 70s, began to understand how consumers really are suffering harm, and it's not always reflected in large dollar damages. And by right, if the statute provides you have a right to access the court, even if you have like a $5,000 or $7,000 potential claim, you should be able to go to court and do that. And by allowing fee shifting, attorneys will be able to go to court for consumers and seek collection of those fees and costs against the companies that are harming and cheating consumers, essentially. Sometimes judges don't always get that, though. They question why you're litigating a $5,000 or $7,000 claim, and by and large, at least at A4RS, what we see is that if they're cheating one consumer, they're cheating another. And so it's important to enforce these laws and allow for the legal fees and costs, because the companies, when they understand that the court's going to enforce it, they may stop that behavior. So there's a lot behind the reason for attorney fee shifting in consumer protection laws.
And our final question: what should clients understand about fee shifting at the beginning of a case? And why is it important not to assume that attorney's fees will automatically be recovered?
What a consumer should understand, Lizette, is that attorney fee shifting doesn't eliminate all the risk in going into litigation and trying to hold, that other side accountable. It just helps really manage it. Because you have to win, and that can be a gamble because you have humans involved. You have a judge, you have witnesses, and evidence, and what is actually presented to a jury and a judge, and how that's interpreted and absorbed. It can be risky. Here at A4R's Law, we want to make sure we truly believe and that a client has the information to make that step into, pursuing justice and holding whomever accountable for the harm that they've incurred. So, and it has to do with reasonableness and proportionality too, relative to the issues involved. Even though it's a consumer claim, just because a law allows fee shifting, it doesn't mean every dollar spent will be automatically awarded. Judges look at several factors as to the complexity of the case, whether, or not the other side, agreed or disagreed with trying to resolve it, and what efforts were made that way, and just how much legal work was necessary. And some judges understand that better than others. The cost for depositions and some of the other costs, service of process, some of these costs are recoverable under certain statutes and some are not. That's why it's important to understand early in the case how it's structured, whether and if it's a hybrid or hourly case, and how a law firm is billing, and if they can do it on a contingency basis or some kind of hybrid of contingency and where our consumer has to pay hourly. And that may depend on the risk of the case. But the key takeaway is fee shifting laws are designed to protect consumers, but they're not risk-free. And then, asking questions about the risks and what's recoverable can help a consumer make an informed decision about before moving forward. Thank you for another good question.
Christine, thank you so much for taking the time to help us understand fee shifting. We hope you all found this video helpful. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to receive updates on helpful videos like these.